Hey, everyone. This is Eric Nelson, AIA basketball, along with Tony Bennett, the head basketball coach at the University of Virginia. Hey, Tony, thanks for being with us this morning.
Happy to be here, Eric, and glad hopefully we got some good stuff. Depends how good of an interviewer you are to see how good this will be. So no pressure, but look forward to sharing about some basketball stuff and whatever it is you want to ask.
We'll see if we can rise to the challenge here. Some competitive greatness in a few Zoom moments.
Yes.
So this is not what anybody in college basketball thought life would be like right now, or at least the last couple of weeks. So how are you, like, how have you spent your time? You're home like everybody else. What are you doing? What is something you've done that you've never been able to do?
I've been riding my Peloton bike a lot more. I'm a fan of the Peloton bike, a fan of spike ball. Yeah, I tell you, we've had some great family spike ball games. That's a blast. It's good. So I've been introduced to that. My daughter's she's a freshman home from Wake Forest, and my son's a junior in high school. And my daughter, she got me. We just started. She's like, "Dad, you've never watched Harry Potter." She liked all the Harry Potter movies. So I've watched over this time the first two Harry Potter movies. Sorry, and that's interesting. So among some other things, you pick a couple Netflix things, and we're still as coaches able to obviously talk to our players, do some recruiting through this the phone and all that. So, but it's been good. But those probably spike ball and being able to ride the Peloton and a few things like that have been doing that a little more and watching a few more shows than perhaps normal.
So who wins spike ball?
Yeah, it's unfortunately there's a lot of trash talk and we rotate the teams and there's anybody who plays it, there's this thing called the rim ball, and we need more clarification because it's when all of a sudden you're down, hey, that was a rim ball, that doesn't count. And we've gotten in some heated matchups and interference. Someone's in the way. If you've ever played it, like I got no chance to get one of these balls, but if my wife or anybody's near, hey, you were in my way, we got to replay that point. So learn how to work it a little bit.
So is there like international rules that you can play on the rim ball, kind of like international basketball rules?
Yeah, it should be. It's if you hit it and it rolls across, but that's good. You should be able to goaltend when it's on the rim, right?
Yeah. You could just impose that next time you play.
That's right.
Well, who's the healthiest in your family? Who's the most skittish about, just, hey, what are we doing here to stay clean?
Yeah, no, I think we're all pretty good that way. It's you obviously you respect what's going on, but it's I think the older people understand the need for that, but I think younger people have a sense of being untouchable in some ways, and I think they know, why can't I hang out with my friends all the time or go? I think you have to make sure they understand what's going on. And with anything, it seems like experience and age gives a little more insight and wisdom. But I have a 17-year-old boy, so understanding cleanliness and things is a little more challenging with him. My daughter's great, and obviously my wife and I, that's not as much of an issue. Yeah. Hopefully he won't see this.
We're older. We're in the range. We got to watch.
That's right.
It.
Right.
So who could have ever predicted especially for you and Virginia basketball, the last three end of the season, an early exit, a national championship, and a quarantine. How bizarre. But it's affecting, what I'm finding is it's affecting players and coaches all very differently. So what are you experiencing with your players and your staff and even you personally? How's it affecting you?
Yeah, no, it was strange. I'd like to say quarantine / still defending national champs or still reigning champs. We can say it that way since we got socked in the gut so hard after the loss to UMBC. But, I think first it was that moment. We're preparing. We're at our shoot-around getting ready to play in the ACC tournament game. And then the word came that you wouldn't be playing. And I think we knew probably is the NCAA tournament in jeopardy, and that kind of took its place when we were on the bus back from Greensboro going to Charlottesville. But we tried to be real intentional because we had played 30 games. When we heard the word at our shoot around, we just looked at it and said, okay, we actually played a game of knockout. We said, since we're not going to have an ACC tournament champion, we're going to have down here in Greensboro a knockout champion. So the coaches, the managers, everyone got in this huge line, and we played knockout. We did some ball handling tricks. We tried to make it light and enjoy it. But then, when we were on the bus and we heard that the season and the tournament was canceled, obviously, when we got back, we sat down with them. We tried to celebrate the seniors, their legacy, because for them, obviously, and I'm so thankful that it was, Mamadi Diakite and Braxton Key, for those who know our team, they got to taste a national championship last year. So they at least had that. But, our team had won 8 in a row, and we had won, I think it was 11 out of the last 12, beat some really good teams in the ACC. We were healthy, and we were playing good basketball, and that's such a key heading into the tournament. And so, so I think we were all excited about what had transpired last year, and then going into it in a good place. That's so important. But we just really tried to celebrate their legacy, how the season played out. And Eric, it was interesting. We do something, and I've shared this to a few people. We do something, we call it the chair exercise. And so the last thing I did with my team, with the seniors, it's a really cool exercise. We put one guy on a chair throughout the year, and I saved Mamadi, our outgoing senior, and we put him on the chair in front of the team and our staff, and we asked him 3 questions. Tell me who your hero is, tell me a hardship in your life, and a highlight. And then we turn it over to the team, and the staff said, go ahead, ask any questions. And I said, well, Mamadi, the last thing we're going to do kind of collectively as a group is we're going to put you on the chair, and I'm going to ask you those questions, and I want you to share. So you talk about a unique way to end it. And so we put Mamadi on the chair and just got to share. It was really poignant. It was really powerful and meaningful to be able to hear him speak. And there was some gravity in it because we knew. So that's kind of how we, in a way, ended it with our season.
It sounds like it really probably helps some of the grieving process for those guys. It lets them process the loss of the end of the season so abruptly. So have you found that staff and others that it's affecting in a way that there's a, like grieving of a loss? Or, how was it for you personally?
Yeah, I think, it's, you watch some of the games when they rebroadcast, either some of our games from the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, you won again this year. You won again this year.
Yeah, right. My wife and I decided, we actually, normally I wouldn't do it, but we said, okay, we sort of mirrored last year's tournament. We played Gardner-Webb in the first round. I think it was a Friday, so we watched Friday roughly around the same time that game. Then Saturday we had a big game against Oklahoma, so we kind of just followed the tournament. Just sometimes you're trying to fill some time, right? Yeah. And so that was actually enjoyable to watch it. But yeah, there's always that what if. And the NCAA tournament, I think sometimes too much is not enough is made of a quality regular season and the battle that's in that, because that's amazing. And everything is just, what do you do in March? NCAA tournament. And so that's why I chose to celebrate, what our guys did. We finished second in the league. But you and I know, and there's such a draw to the storylines that play out in an NCAA tournament. Myself and our team, more than anyone else, can speak to that. The pain of being the first team ever to lose to a 16 seed, that drama unfolding, having played in the past, been to right on the edge of a Final Four and getting beat with a lead, Sweet 16s, early exits. So, and then last year's national championship, there is something that is so that just puts the nation, and I think the world in sports, just to a standstill, where you start with that many teams and watch it unfold. And so when that's not there, right, like anything, like you're so used to it. And it's not just a one-day thing. It's a 3-week thing. So you're you feel that void over 3 weeks, as opposed to just bang one game or one night that it's built up to, which I think is different.
It's interesting. I was talking to our friend Clark Kellogg, who just said there was a grieving that first weekend after usually the first weekend of the tournament that he went through himself. Well, Tony, in our ministry and organization, we talk to athletes and coaches all around the world, and it seems like everybody, it's affecting them differently. The reality is that so much of our person, our identity, in some ways, in many athletes and coaches around the world, is tied up in winning and losing. And so talk about identity, talk about how you move forward and how you have in your own life, and in terms of hope. What is hope like for you? Those are powerful words, identity and hope. So why don't you just pick those and talk for a second about how that's affected?
Yeah. I mentioned that chair exercise that we did with Mamadi, and last year, each coach has to go on there, and each player, when it was my turn on the chair, instead of answering a hardship, I made all the guys who went through losing, being the first, one seed to lose, answer what did losing to UMBC teach you? What did that hardship teach you? Because whenever you experience a hard thing, just because you went through it does nothing for you. It's how you apply it. It's how you respond to it. And when I sat on the chair and I answered that question, I said, what it did for me, I said, it did two things. And I remember it like it was yesterday, talking to our team. I said, it produced in me a burning fire to want to be a better coach, to want our team to experience a run in the NCAA tournament. And I said, perhaps get to a Final Four and win a national championship. And I could see all the guys, they were nodding their heads. I said, it made me want to go after it in a way I hadn't. And they were all locked in. I said, but what that also did for me is something I think far greater. It made me realize that if I never win a national championship, if someday I get fired as a coach, I'll still be okay, because it made me realize that my hope or my identity has to be in something greater than just sport. And it drew me closer. And losing that game and basically being humbled, professionally speaking, and being brought to my knees after a phenomenal year, it drew me closer to my family, to my wife and kids, to my own players. It made us rely on each other in a way that loss wouldn't have. But ultimately, it brought me to my faith, my relationship in the Lord. Because when you look at even what's going on now, your hope or your things, it's being challenged, because anything that is temporary, health, sports, your identity in that, finances, life, death, that stuff's being challenged. So what is there that is permanent? And that's where I've always, I can remember when I was on the podium at the Final Four and someone asked me a question. When you're in the media rooms for the Final Four, that's like another world. There's so many media people there, and they're asking so many questions. And someone asked me a question. You talk sometimes about your faith as being a Christian. What about that? And right away when I was sitting there, a verse from the Bible popped into my head. I think it's from 1 Peter 3:15, but it says, always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have, but do it with gentleness and respect. And I can remember sitting there saying, the hope I have is not in being a national championship or being wealthy or even anything. The hope I have is in my faith in Christ. And, it's funny, we just obviously celebrated Easter and all that it stands for, and a hope in a life after this. If this all there is, I was fortunate enough even to make it in the NBA. I was a backup point guard, but that was my dream as a little guy growing up. NBA, boy, if I make it. Or as a coach, win a national championship. If that's all there is, or to get married, and that's bigger than other things, or to, be a parent, you find out pretty quickly if that's all there is, or that's your idol, it's going to be empty. There has to be something of significance more. And I think when you have your hope in, for me, it is in my faith in Christ. It allows you in a unique way, in a better way, to enjoy successes or blessings of family, of all those things, handle them, and they're so much richer. And then when hard things come your way, I think it allows you to deal with them with a different kind of perspective. And that's probably that's what this is doing, I think, to so many people. It's making them take a step back, and even me, and say, man, where's my identity? Where's my hope? And is it in something that can't be taken away? Because all the things we're seeing can be taken away with what's happened.
Yeah, you're right. There's a stripping of people's things they're dependent on usually. Well, talk about this, because there's a practical part of, you just referenced it, and most people in the U.S. know this. Internationally, maybe not as much. The highest and the lowest college basketball experience in some ways, right? So on a practical level, just practically speaking, you are in the fire, so to speak, and you're having to remind yourself of identity and the hope you spoke about. And how do I worship God in the midst of all these things, right? So how does it work for you? How does it work for you personally in the course of a season, and even now when things aren't going as well, or they didn't, and things went like they did? Talk about how do you practically remind yourself of identity, hope, and worship? What are some things in your life that you do?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, again, after we won the national championship, and I'm not keep going, but I remember there was a song by Torrin Wells that I referenced, that Hills and Valleys, it was called. And it really is, it's the idea of God he's the God of the hills, and he's the God of the valleys. And I think that when you go through a season, you go through anything in life, there's going to be so many ups, there's going to be so many downs. And it's, I was kind of talking about identity. It's a daily process, because just because I have a faith, just because I believe in my mind, I know what's right, and I know what's true and eternal, and hope what it is, it doesn't mean that I don't have to daily, remind myself, refresh myself, or fight that battle. I mean, that you're always going to want to be, the battle or the idol of being successful. And there's nothing wrong with that. Those things are good, but there is a battle going on of, all right, what am I going to really worship or bow down to, so to speak? And you can live, as it talks about in the Bible, you can be in the world, but not always of it, because you can get consumed by things that take you down wrong paths. But I think there has to be it's funny, the question you asked, we use this a lot in our basketball terminology with our players. First comes discipline, then comes freedom. We talk about that in, you have to understand the fundamentals, the basics. There's a discipline that's required to be a good player, to be a good team, and certain things. And it's a daily work in your practices. And I think the same thing holds true even in your faith life. There's a discipline of, having a quiet time, just spending time in prayer, spending time listening to worship music, reading the Bible, growing in that. There is, and you have to be, that's your part in that. There's a discipline to it. But boy, as you do that, there's such a freedom in that, and it allows you to kind of go out each day and be able to, I think, have the right perspective, have the peace, and things like that. So that's a daily thing, a daily reminder that helps you kind of go through the seasons, again, regardless of how successful it is or how hard it is. Now, when it's hard, it refines you, and it does put you in that crucible when you're not successful, when you're losing, when you're having to deal with things. It's funny, we were talking, the way we started this interview, one of the Netflix series that my dad said, hey, check this out, see what you think, is it's a Netflix series called Sunderland Till I Die, and it's about the soccer team in England that just got relegated. They were in I think it's the Premier League, and just seeing, that town, their soccer is everything. So much like in sports here, that their team is everything. But this is a level, and those, if you have any European people listening and they understand soccer and you hear stuff, it's, at least the way the Netflix series is portraying, it's everything. And it's, that team's got to win. They got to get back up. And I mean, just seeing the intensity of the fans, the players, the coaches. It's really a look at almost like what sports is like to us, but this is amped up. And I sit there and watch that, and that's a reminder of wow. And if you don't have, as a coach, as a player, if you don't have something other than that, that's going to take you on a windy road or a roller coaster road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who's the? I've heard of that series. Who was the coach? Do you remember the name of the coach of that team?
Well, I don't want to ruin the series, but there possibly could be, as in any professional sports counselors, if it's not going well, there could be some changes and there could be multiple coaches. It's not and I'm only 4 episodes in, but it really has caught my attention because it deals with, like recruiting and the players, the fans. It takes a unique look. And again, I'm not a huge soccer guy, but a couple guys on my staff are. So I've talked to them and they're like, no, you got to understand how this works. So I turned my staff on and they this is amazing. They can't believe it.
Well, I don't know if your team's doing this, but I did hear that some of the Premier League teams are playing FIFA against other teams.
That's
and,
true.
like the NBA guys are playing horse.
Yes.
2K
I
against.
can imagine. Yeah, no, that's for sure.
Well, let's wrap up with this. I think you've talked a little bit about this, but you've experienced God and the character of God very uniquely because of the last several years. What are 1 or 2 truths that you've learned, you've experienced from God that you think are really helpful for a coach or an athlete to consider or ruminate on during this season of life?
Well, I think we talked about one of them. Kind of, we said that how constant your faith in the Lord is, the hills and the valleys that you will experience in this vocation. And I really believe this with all my heart for the players I coach and for coaches out there. First, I believe he's in control of everything or allows everything. And my program it's not my program. I've been entrusted to be a coach, and it's a gift. Every coach out there, every player that you coach, they're gifted. And we're almost to be stewards of trying to help our players, our team, maximize their gifts, because it's a gift to be able to coach. It's a gift to be able to certainly be a husband, a father, and be in the situations we are. And you want to talk about a way I think you use the word worship, which, but to give back or think about it like to honor the Lord with the gifts he's given you, or the gifts that the players have, to just try to maximize those. And first, it's about your own faith with the Lord and getting that right. And I say this all the time, everyone is on a journey. Everyone is at a different spot in what they believe in the reality of who Christ is, what that means, a personal relationship with him. Some are, I assume they know this is an Athletes in Action forum, so they know there's something to do with the faith part. But man, you have to be a respecter of everyone's journey and what place they're at. And that's between each person and their Lord as far as that journey. It's not. But once that's a relevant and it becomes the most important thing in your life, man, if you can model that to other people and show them that there is a hope, there is a joy that the world can't touch because the world didn't give it. There is a peace that comes from knowing Christ that can't be affected by death, by finances, by success or failure or fame. You'll feel human emotions that'll mess with you in that. But when it really gets peeled back, that can't be touched because it's found in an untouchable thing, in a gift from the Lord that will carry you through anything. That is the greatest joy. That's the treasure when it talks about in the Bible where a man went in a field and he found this great treasure. And it says, in his joy, he went away and sold all of his possessions so he could possess that field because that treasure was in that field. That's what knowing Christ is to me. And I speak of that with the greatest joy and the greatest respect because it is a journey that everyone else has. But that, you talk about lighting someone's fire, that's what it is. And to be able to, go along with people like you, Eric, with Athletes in Action, with my wife, with others who know and share that hope, and try to grow in it, because it's our journey, and then represent it and honor the Lord with it, with others, respectfully, because I work at a public institution, so I have to be respectful about it, is what this is about, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, you do that well, and God's grace allows us to do it well, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Okay, well, last question. If you got to pick an old school basketball player to play horse against, they were going to put you on ESPN in one of these games, who's the old school guy you'd love to play against?
He's going to get mad at me because he's not, if he won't hear, maybe he'd hear this. He's not really old school. Well, look, I'm old school. He's old school. I grew up watching Mark Price, and he was awesome. The way he played, I wore 25, partly because my father wore 25 and my sister did, but he wore 25. The way he played, the way he could split ball screens, he was so special. If he was in today's game, I mean, he had the Stephen Curry type of things. I loved him. Mark Price he's one of my heroes that I watch basketball, and he's a man of faith. Like, I literally watched him and his platform and what he did with it. But you talk about shooting that ball, quick release. I love him. His only problem was he wasn't left-handed as I am. So, but special, man. So Mark Price.